Justin Snyder. Thank you so much for coming on the Inner Edison podcast. I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me on, Ed.
My pleasure. I'm glad we got the sun out of your eyes, or my eyes. Anyway, let's get on with the show we've been talking about. So my question was earlier, because I always ask everybody, but I don't tell the people that are listen to the podcast what I ask. And I always ask, what's a win on the show for you today? And one of the things you said is to get out how to not take synthetic vitamins. So I kind of want to go down that path a little bit to why, and then we can always go back to your background once we get there. But why is that so important?
So there's a major issue in Australia at the moment where people have B6 toxicity from synthetic vitamins, which is when they make vitamins in a laboratory, they add all these things in, and one of the things they add in is B6, and there's people who have been paralyzed and are in wheelchairs in Australia from taking vitamins because they've had far too much B6. And so that's just one of 100 different examples. There's issues with people having liver issues from turmeric extracts. There's all kinds of different issues that happen when you take synthetic vitamins and isolated compounds, because the body doesn't really know what to do with it. It's kind of like ultra processed foods in that way, because you think you take it in, and especially with vitamins, you think you're doing something good for your health, but your body doesn't really know what to do with it because it doesn't recognize it as food. And the people who are starting to experience really serious issues with that. And what we do that's different is we do whole food supplements. So we don't use any alcohol extractions. We don't do any isolated compounds. We don't do any synthetic ingredients. It's all basically just food, which has a very different impact on your body and your health compared to your average vitamins that are out on the market. And the sad thing about, the vitamins you get off the shelf is that they're 80 or 90% fillers. They're not even the actual vitamin you think you're taking. And then what's left in there of the actual vitamin has been synthesized in a laboratory, probably extracted, which means they've taken, like the ashwagandha, for example, which is really good for stress, and soaked it in alcohol and then sold that alcohol water. So you're only getting the soluble parts of the ashwagandha. You're not getting the whole full spectrum of the active compounds that are in that, and the body doesn't recognize it. And we're seeing a lot of issues now with these kind of supplements and vitamins. And so I really want to get the word out to people that there's an alternative, and that, it's everything comes full circle. It's this whole thing of like, I remember going to a farmer's market many years ago, and there was a sign on that said, eat organic food, or as your grandparents called it, food. Because that's what food was not that long ago, like now we have this really strange idea of like, what's food? Whereas really, like, if people weren't eating it 100 years ago, you probably shouldn't be eating it. And so that goes for, ultra processed food, and it goes for vitamins as well.
Wow. So how do you process the stuff how do you do it different? How should somebody do it differently? I'll get these questions out in a second. I mean, you're in Australia. I'm not saying that so how did you get into this whole business? Have you been in this type of business forever? So I grew up as a kid. I worked on my grandfather's dairy. I swore I'd never, and I saw, dairy milk, which is totally different than regular milk. It still had the cream and the milk on there. We used to have to separate the two after it's been in the fridge, but it's a totally different milk, and it wasn't pasteurized at that point because it didn't go to the factory.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example. As soon as you start pasteurizing it, and you're taking out a lot of the good bacteria, and you're taking out a lot of the good fats, and you're taking out a lot of the stuff in there. So humans have been consuming, cow's milk forever. But like what we do now is a very different thing to what our grandparents were consuming when it was just like milk straight from the cow with all the cream and everything on it. And that has a detrimental impact on the body. And it's the same with like, the low fat and all these kind of things. Like as soon as you take these natural whole foods and do all this extra processing to them, it becomes something different, and it's often something the body can't recognize. And so then it causes other issues on top of that. And so like what we do, for example, is like ashwagandha, for example, which is an Ayurvedic root. I actually grow it on my farm here, but it's incredible for lowering cortisol levels. So it's really good for like stress and anxiety and that kind of thing. And what everyone else does is they'll take the ashwagandha, they'll soak it in some alcohol, they'll then they'll throw out the ashwagandha root, sell the alcohol. But what we do is we take the whole ashwagandha root and freeze dry it and powder it and put it into capsules. So you're getting the whole thing. It's exactly the same as like, the full cream milk straight from the cow versus something that's been pasteurized and had the fat taken out, and the cow's been pumped full of antibiotics before it's been given the milk, and all these other issues that come from that. It's the same thing with supplements. The more you screw around with it and the more changes you make to it, the more issues it can have long term in the body because it's not recognized as food.
Why do they soak it in alcohol?
To make an extract.
And
that's what an extract is.
And then they take that extract and do what with it?
It's just, I think a lot of it is cheap, like if you imagine you've got the mushrooms are a really good example. We sell a lot of like lion's mane mushroom and turkey tail and all those kind of like medicinal mushrooms. And most people, particularly in the US as well, but most of the people, when they sell the mushrooms, they sell a mushroom extract. So they'll take a little bit of lion's mane, put it in a massive vat of alcohol, and then they can take a tiny amount of mushroom and effectively make thousands of units from that tiny little bit because they've extracted it into the alcohol. Whereas what we do is we take the whole mushroom and put that into capsules. So it's obviously a lot more expensive to do that than it is to take a little bit of mushroom and extrapolate it across a whole lot of alcohol. It's about profits, I think.
Oh, just how they're producing things. Back to the how you do mushrooms. Yeah. What vitamins and stuff are in mushrooms? Why it's so important?
So the mushrooms are fascinating. I mean, every mushroom is very different. So like something like lion's mane, which is the most popular medicinal mushroom in Australia and also in the US, has got 280 active compounds in it. And up until very recently, people thought it was all about the beta glucans in lion's mane. Beta glucans are very good for you, but you can find them in oats. You can find them in all kinds of things. It's not, they're slightly different in the mushrooms, but that's not what makes the mushroom special. The lion's mane has these compounds in it called hericenones and erinacins. And these are compounds which are only found in lion's mane mushroom. And recent studies have indicated that they might help with things like dementia, memory, recall, all those kind of things. And people generally buy it when they're experiencing brain fog or having trouble concentrating. It's a brain health thing. And, all those studies are all very new because it's only become part of the zeitgeist in, the last couple of years. But again, most lion's mane products, you find out they're lion's mane extracts. So they're selling you an alcohol liquid that might contain some lion's mane in it. Whereas that means you're not getting the parts of the lion's mane that can't be extracted. You're only getting the extracted parts of it, and it's usually heavily diluted. So what we do is we take the whole lion's mane mushroom and we take the mycelium from the mushroom as well, which is like the roots of the mushroom, and freeze dry it and put into capsules. There's no alcohol, there's no extraction, there's no fillers, there's nothing added. It's just we've taken the mushroom. I think if you could do things as close to how they appear in nature, I don't know of an example where that's not the best way in terms of health, is to do things as close to nature as possible. And the same for the cow, right? Like the best milk is the milk that's come straight from the cow. It hasn't been screwed with at all. So that's what we do with our supplements, is we think about how can we get this to people in a way that's as close to how it's produced in nature as possible, because that's how our bodies have evolved to consume it. Our bodies haven't evolved to consume things that have been produced in a laboratory with all these fillers and excipients and alcohol added.
How did you get in this whole market of this? And because I said about my grandfather's dairy, and it was supposed to come back to you about how did you get into this? And we went down this whole rabbit hole, because when I did the Camino de Santiago in Spain, the breads, the other stuff I could eat them, and there was no problem. I didn't have a problem with them. But here in the States, it's different. And same with the milk, same with everything. Because the milk over there, they said something about they heat it or something.
I think that's called homogenizing. when they heat it and they pasteurize it, and the cows pump full of antibiotics, and
I'm talking about it in Spain. It's different.
Oh, in Spain. I don't know. I don't know about the milk, but as soon as you said that, it made me think of Italy, because my wife's Italian and we went to Italy for a month in July, and I eat pasta every day and didn't put on any weight. And here, if I have pasta, I need to lie down afterwards. And I think that actually has to do with the wheat. And I think it's because here we have a wheat, we don't use the original wheat seeds that they were using thousands of years ago. It's been adapted and it's been changed, often with GMOs and that kind of thing. But then we also spray the crap out of the crops when it's growing with glyphosate and all kinds of other chemicals. And like, for me personally, I go, duh, of course that's going to have an impact on your body. Like, you're spraying something on the plant which is going to kill all the weeds around it, but it's not going to impact the plant or your health at all. Like, come on, guys. Like, I understand the argument that, like, yeah, we need to spray because otherwise we wouldn't be able to grow and we wouldn't be able to feed, these billions of people and whatever. Okay, that's a separate argument. But to say that, like, spraying poison on the food is not going to have an impact on you when you're eating the food, that just sounds dumb to me. And I think we're being dishonest with ourselves when we go, no, it's only affecting the weeds around the plant. It's not affecting the plant. It's not affecting you. I think that's garbage. And I think in one of the things they do really good in Europe and Italy and Spain, these kind of places, is they don't use the chemicals in the same ways we do. They have very strict rules. A lot of the chemicals that we use in Australia and the US aren't even allowed in Europe. And they certainly don't use them to the same degree we do. And I think that's the impact. And there's been studies that have come out this year that look at glyphosate and the effect it has on gut health and bloating and weight gain, because your body doesn't know what to do with it, because you're putting poison in your body. It's things that were made for war, to be used as gases against the enemy, that we go, oh, let's put this on the food because it's just going to kill the weeds and make things easier. And I think it's time to be honest, for a long time, for a very, very long time, there was lots of studies showing how healthy smoking is and how good for you smoking is. And now we all go, of course, that's crap. Well, I think it's only a matter of time until we all go, well, of course it's rubbish that, like, that spraying chemicals on your food doesn't have any impact on your health.
Yeah, it does.
Of course it does.
Of course it does. It has to. Otherwise, yeah.
There's this great cartoon that I saw 20 years ago that's still stuck in my head. That was like a guy in his farm, and he's spraying everything, and he's got on the whole hazmat suit and everything, and he's spraying, and there's a bird saying to him, "Do you wear that same suit when you eat it?" And I just think that's like such a clever illustration. And I feel awful for the farmers who are so dependent on these chemicals in order to grow food, because it's like they're already struggling and they're already, unable to support themselves, and already have all this debt, and already getting pushed down on price by all the supermarkets. And they're already in a very, very difficult situation. And for them to now go, oh, great, now I've got to stop using chemicals and I've got to have all these weeds to deal with already, it's too much for them to cope with. They're already on the edge. And so I feel really bad for the farmers who have become accustomed to using these poisons. But, like, I think, again, that's a separate conversation. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and go, no, we need to use. There was actually a court case in Australia. I know in America there's been court cases against Monsanto where they've actually been, the people who are suing them have been awarded billions. But there were similar court cases in Australia, and the judge actually said, we can't find against Monsanto or against the glyphosate or these chemicals because it would have detrimental impacts on our farming. And, like, it's
too big. It's that whole too big to fail thing.
Well, exactly. And but that's a separate conversation where, you've got to look at things honestly, and you've got to go, like, is this having impact on the health? Yes, it is. Okay, well, then we've got to do the other stuff afterwards. But the first question has to be, like, what kind of impact are these having? And I see these studies all the time and say, eating organic makes no difference to, eating conventional stuff that's full of poison. And I think, whoever's paying for the study gets the result they want, unfortunately.
Well, that's how it is. You can get any study to give you what you want, but and that's the thing about statistics. That's why Mark Twain there says there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, because you can manipulate them any way you want. I got a book behind me that says how to lie with statistics, or how to and it talks about how you can make the numbers work for you by finding the numbers that work for you.
Yeah, exactly. And look at pharmaceuticals. Like the pharmaceutical companies will sponsor 50 studies, and they will only publish the 5 that give the answer they want, and the others don't get published. And they still got 5 studies.
Yeah. Well, here's an example. I'm in the States, and we have houses for sale, and they do a pest report. Well, the seller doesn't like that pest report, so go get a different pest report. And that one it's not as much as the other one. And then that's the one they try to use, when in reality, by law, it's the first one that they have to use, but they try to go around. And that's the same thing. They're doing any report they want, and then they don't understand why 10 years they get sued about lying about a pest report. So,
and my cousin who I look up to and who I consider to be very wise always says to me, if you don't understand something, follow the money. It's like, right. It's like that's where you'll find the answer as to why something's a certain way. And unfortunately, that's very predominant in the Australian US culture, which are both very similar, I think. But I go to Europe and I go to other places, and I feel like because they have a culture that's beyond just making money, and don't get me wrong, I love making money, I love capitalism, but they have something beyond that, which they see as more important than just making money at all costs. They have the family and the traditions and the culture and the going out and sitting outside and drinking wine at night, and the same foods they've been eating for thousands of years, and all this kind of thing. Whereas I feel like our cultures are very much just centered around making money, and it does seem to be shifting now. But I don't even feel like we put a huge amount of importance on relationships. We're such social animals, but we kind of put making money, the Alex Hormozy kind of archetype, above everything else. And I think that just leads to people being depressed. And I heard Gary Brecker talking about the other day, he's been studying for decades, what it takes to live a long, healthy life. And it's whole foods, exercise, and community. That's it. It's not complicated. It's like, and through Forest Superfoods, we're really trying to focus on that whole food aspect of things, is getting people back to just eating real food. Like it's, if it comes in a packet, it's probably not that good for you. And, we all have cravings for things, but like, if you can make it yourself rather than go out and buy it, from the supermarket, it's going to be 10 times better for you, because it's not going to have all this crap in it that makes it be able to sit on a shelf for 6 months.
All right. Since you brought up, so you keep saying superfood, which I assume is part of your name of your company.
Yep.
How long has that been going?
I started Forest Superfoods 14 years ago. So it's been going a long time, and it's been going, I kind of, in my early 20s, I had some minor health issues. Like I remember going to the doctor one day with a rash on my arm, and I said to I grew up thinking doctors know everything. They have all the information, they have all the answers. And I went to the doctor with this rash on my arm, and I said, I don't understand what this rash is. It's not going away. And he says, well, here's some cortisol cream. You're going to use this every day for the rest of your life. And I went, but it wasn't there 3 months ago. It wasn't there for the first 20 years of my life. Now it's appeared. There's got to be a reason for it. Like, it's just putting a cream over it for the rest of my life doesn't seem like a great solution. But that was the only answer he had. And for me, that was like the start of this crack of like, maybe they don't have all the answers. Like, they've got a lot of answers, and there's a lot of incredible stuff that's come from Western medicine. There's no doubt. But like, maybe they don't know everything. And it started me down this journey of kind of looking at like how I could take control of my own health and what I could do to improve my health myself, rather than going and taking a pill for something. And I discovered things like spirulina, which is this algae that grows on the top of the water that's like super high in protein and iron and B12 and other B vitamins and vitamin E and all these different things. And it's just an algae. And I found these, I was traveling around India, and I found these spirulina chips, and I would eat them, and I felt great eating them. And I kind of went, oh, this idea of like and this was pretty, it wasn't a very common thing back then, but this idea of like, you can improve your health through what you put in your body stuck with me as an idea. And now it seems like common sense. Like, of course, what you put in your body is going to impact your health. But I really thought it was a no-brainer that this was going to be a massive industry where people could, through basically supplementation was going to be huge. And so I started the business back then and, lost money for 6 years, but I'm extremely stubborn and just stuck at it. And, it's growing by 30% or 40% a year. And we've sold probably 1.2 million superfoods since then.
Wow. Do you sell all over the world?
All over the world. Yeah.
Okay. And all right, so you 15 years, and you lost money in the beginning, which most businesses do. I mean, at least it's not Amazon, and how much they lost. So the Inner Edison is about the greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. What would you say in that 15-year was one of your greatest defeats?
God, there's been so many. I started the business. So I was thinking about doing the business for many years and doing a lot of research and that kind of thing. And then my best friend at the time, he was working in the mining industry and he was hating his job in the corporate world and just wanted out. And I said, hey, start this business with me. And, you can quit your job. And he's really great at creative design and graphics, which was not my skills back then. And so we started this business together. And a few years in, I realized it wasn't going to work. I felt like I was doing all the work and he just wasn't showing up. I wasn't doing work. I wasn't putting in effort. And he had 50% of the company. And so our relationship deteriorated more and more all the time as I felt like there was this imbalance between us and he felt like I was being a tyrant. And, he didn't really see that this was like this business he didn't see the potential, whereas I saw that this could just be a massive business that helped so many people. And he was more interested in girls and partying, and I was more interested in growing the business. And our relationship here, and I got to a point where I was like, well, I'm putting in all this work and giving, and have to split whatever little is left with him. I'm just going to go off and do something else. So I had other businesses and other projects that I worked on, and the business just didn't do anything for a very long time. And then he came to me one day and said, look, if you want to buy me out, this is how much I want. And I paid him that same day. And, within 6 months, the business was up, 3x what it was doing 6 months previous. And because I started putting work in, and that was a really important lesson for me in terms of like taking on partners and that was a massive failure, and the business almost didn't go anywhere because of it. And I think that was one of the big ones.
Yeah, I can see that because I've had business partners in the past. And keyword had.
Yeah,
I'm harder to work with. I understand that. I'm a vet. I want things done now and a certain way, and that rubs people the wrong way, which is okay as long as you're doing what you say you're doing, and we're okay. But half the time they're not.
Well, exactly. I remember I went away for a week because my girlfriend was living in Spain at the time, and he just didn't show up and pack orders. Like he just went out partying, and I just remember being so upset. And my biggest regret is that the relationship fell apart because of the business conflict. But it's a hard lesson learned.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask for one more now, because that's a good one. That's a good one for people to understand that your partners in your life, wife, business partner, all those other things are very important, and you need to make sure who you're getting into bed with. It's the same thing as like dating. You get into bed with the wrong person, it's going to haunt you forever.
Yeah. And I think, I'll say to people who are thinking about starting a business, start it by yourself. Bring other people in and give them a percentage of profit if you want, but don't give them equity. I think it's so much easier if you just keep all the equity for yourself. And then it's easier to make decisions as well, because, I've got, some great managers involved in the business. And, but at the end of the day, I can go, yeah, I see what you're saying, but no, we're doing it this way. And we can move on and go on to something else. Whereas if you've got partners, you have to sit and negotiate and you have to compromise. It's a marriage. But if you keep control yourself, decisions can be made. You can make better decisions. And also, you can make decisions that are aligned with your values. Like we don't want to sell cheap mushrooms grown in China like everyone else does, or the extracts, all that stuff we've spoken about. So we don't have to do that. There's no temptation from other investors or venture capitalists or partners, whatever, who go, no, we need to make more profit. Let's buy the cheaper stuff and sell that instead. And so when you maintain control, you can. Someone said, I listen to a lot of business podcasts, and someone said the founder is in control of the soul of the company. It's like, as the founder, you're the one who determines the values of the company and the direction the company goes in. And you can make decisions that don't necessarily result in the best profit, but results in the best business long term that's true to your word. And that's how you build a loyal following that stands the test of time and, survives COVID and survives competitors and survives all the crap that's around the corner that we don't even know about.
All right. So what's next for you guys? Is there anything next? I mean, because you grow everything that you sell?
We work with farms. We work closely with farms, mostly in Australia, who grow the stuff. And then we do all the encapsulating and packaging and warehousing and marketing and logistics and all that stuff ourselves. So we kind of
you said you had a farm, didn't you?
Yeah, I have a farm, but I use that mostly just for growing fruit and veg for my family.
Gotcha. I'm just curious because you said the farm thing. I didn't know if you had, because I'm in the Central Valley of California, which is farm country.
Yes.
They Modesto is what they call us because the dairies also used to be in this area. And I we have everything here, and it's the same thing. We have farmers markets, we have all that stuff, but and now everybody's like, you need to take, vitamins and more vitamins. But like you said, though, can you be taking too much? I know with my wife, she can't stand certain vitamins. They make her throw up. And the question is, what is in that to make you do that? So
100%. And look, everyone's got different gut biome and, everything interacts with people differently. But I think the best thing you can do is eat fresh, organic fruit and vegetables, really, and good quality meat that's, that lives outdoors and isn't pumped full of antibiotics. And I think that's the best thing. And I grow food because I think that's the best possible food that I could give to my family. I can go and harvest a lettuce and we can have it in our salad with dinner within 20 minutes of it being harvested. And I think that's the most important. I want to encourage people to grow their own food and to get reconnected with nature and whole foods and all that kind of stuff. And by growing food myself, I get to understand, what's involved in growing the highest quality food possible. And I do grow a lot of the stuff we sell, but I'm growing it more for myself and to understand how to grow it and what's involved and that kind of thing. But I think fresh is best. And that's the reason why we freeze dry most things, is because when you take a fruit or a vegetable or a herb or whatever, and you dry it, there's nutrient loss that occurs during that drying process. But if you freeze dry, it locks in the nutrients that's almost equivalent to consuming it fresh. And there's a ton of studies on this as well. So we freeze dry all of our supplements and it costs, 10 times more than spray drying, but we're in the business of providing the highest quality supplements we can. Everyone else in the business of making the most profit they can. So it's like it results in a different product, and it costs a little bit more, but you end up with a supplement that's 10 times better. And that's why I think we keep growing so quickly, is because it actually work. It kind of seems silly to buy, no matter how cheap it is, but to buy a supplement or a vitamin that doesn't improve your health or improve your well-being. It's like, you might as well just not take it at all.
So if somebody wanted to try your vitamins out, what do you recommend they try first?
Our Australian grown lion's mane mushroom is our most popular supplement. And then after that, it's the freeze-dried certified organic ashwagandha and the freeze-dried certified organic moringa. The ashwagandha, like we talked about, is really good for stress and anxiety. The moringa is really good for inflammation. And inflammation is a massive issue now that affects, 1 in 3 people or something in Australia and the US. And moringa has actually been shown, there's studies on this you can find online, but there's been some indication that if you take an anti-inflammatory, it kind of just goes after the symptoms of the inflammation. So blocking the pain receptors and that kind of thing. But the moringa actually targets inflammation at the source. So it can actually help to heal inflammatory issues in the joints and muscles and that kind of thing. And so the moringa's become super popular recently. But there's also something like turkey tail mushroom, which is also Australian grown and freeze dried, which is really good for gut health. It's a prebiotic. So everyone knows about probiotics, but a prebiotic creates the right environment in your gut for the good bacteria to flourish. So there's no point taking a probiotic if your stomach's too acid and can't support the good bacteria. It's just going to go straight through you. So the prebiotic creates the right environment in your gut for the good bacteria to be able to, flourish.
All right. So I'm sorry. I was trying to find that one you said for the inflammation.
Moringa.
Moringa. Is that in a bag or a bottle?
The bottle.
I'm on capsules. That's my problem. Probably.
Yeah, moringa. We've got moringa capsules and we've got moringa powder.
Okay. Well, I'll just look. I was just looking on here.
Yeah.
I see it now on the front page. It has them there: lion's mane, ashwagandha, moringa, and then turkey tail. There was a difference. I saw one that was a mini.
Yeah, so the mini like 7-day sample packs.
No, is that what that is? Was that that?
Yeah, so the mini is like for people that want to try stuff before they buy a 30-day supply.
Right. All right, and then how's the new thing you guys had for women with menopause?
Yeah, so we've just released Menopause Relief a week ago, and so we've got a nutritionist who works with us who works in the company full time, and she's spent the last 18 months developing this product, which is specifically for menopause and includes a whole lot of whole foods that have been shown to help with menopause, things like hot flushes and trouble sleeping and mood irregularity and all that kind of stuff. And she's developed this product, and so we've actually done it like TGA listed product, which is similar to FDA, but it's a lot more strict. So it's recognized by the government as a complementary medicine. And that's just come out, probably a week or two ago.
Wow. Well, I hope everybody go checks this out. I'll have the in the show notes, all the information. I'm going to order some of them because I'm looking for new stuff. I just don't like what I have. So.
Yeah, I think I think a lot has to change in the vitamin and supplement industry. It's way too easy for people to make a supplement and call it vitamin B12 supplement, and 90% of it is just fillers and starches because, they can make a cheap product that they can sell for $8 in the supermarket, but it's not going to do any good, and it might even do a lot of harm, like we spoke about at the start. So I encourage people when they buy supplements to really research: how's it dried? Is it pure? Is it where's it grown? What else is in it? Is it an extract or is it a whole food? There's a lot of, and if people go onto our blog at forestsuperfoods.com, there's like a lot of information there about extracts and about isolated compounds and freeze drying and all this kind of information, because at the end of the day, you're in control of your own health and you have to take responsibility for your own health. And we want to educate people as to how to make the best decisions as to, what to take to feel the best they can.
Yeah, I agree. Justin, before we go, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you today?
No, just the website's forestsuperfoods.com is probably the only other thing people need to know. But I mean, if people want to reach out to me, they can reach out to me directly through LinkedIn, or if they go to the website and they want to speak to, we do free consultations for people with our nutritionist. We don't charge anything. We just want to help people to be healthier, and so they can go onto the website and contact us and have a free consultation with our nutritionist. And I think we're living in the best time in history, but we can make it better if we just instead of letting big business control our health, we decide we're going to take control of our health ourselves and think about what's natural and what did your grandparents eat as food 100 years ago, and consume more of that and less of the crap that's made in a laboratory somewhere.
Yeah, Justin, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate the information you gave and getting to know you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Ed.
My pleasure.